I want to tell you congratulations, because you are responsible for helping the family of Tupac Shakur get justice and closure because of some of your interviews you did with Keefe D on Vlad TV. Yeah. I have already said it. I think you should win a Peabody. If you was any other journalist outside of hip hop, I think you would get some type of an award for that.
Thank you, man.
How do you feel?
I mean, the purpose wasn't really for him to get locked up or anything else like that, because as I've said before, when Las Vegas PD reached out to me, I didn't respond. I didn't cooperate. My whole thing was, this is a story I'd heard for a long time, for close to about 18 years or so. And by actually sitting down with Keefe and getting his whole story from beginning to end, at the end of that interview, I'm like, okay, I pretty much solved the case at this point. Shout out to Greg Kading, who actually got the original Keefe D confession. But in terms of the public, that was the first time Keefe actually told the entire story of how it happened, what led up to it, what happened that night, and what happened afterwards. So, I mean, ultimately, I don't think anyone could really be surprised at the outcome.
I was going to ask, during the interview, because it's crazy, when he was arrested, you go down this rabbit hole of things that that you've investigated, that you've done interviews with. I thought, from maybe the interviews, it made it seem like he had a deal already on the table. Yeah. Was any of that true? Like, I thought that was the reason why he was able to talk about it.
Right. So he had a proffer agreement. So when Greg Kading met up with him, Keefe D was
Who's Greg Kading?
Greg Kading was an LAPD investigator.
Yep.
Who was looking into the entire case. So he had caught Keefe in this huge PCP ring, and Keefe was facing life in prison. So what happened was, there's something called a proffer agreement, aka Queen for a Day, meaning that you could sit down with someone, they could ask you a whole bunch of questions, and you could admit to all the crimes you did that day, and you can't be charged with any of those crimes. And in exchange, they dropped the whole PCP case against him. He was able to walk free. But the thing about proffer agreements, from what I understand, is that it's called Queen for a Day because it's only valid that particular day. So if you choose to retell that story afterwards, you could potentially get charged for it. So a little bit of a gray area, and I think that his lawyer is probably going to be fighting in terms of that. But I think Keefe was under the assumption that he said it once, he could say it as many times as he wants. And I don't think that's the case when it comes to proffer agreements.
When you say that Vegas police wanted you to cooperate, what did that mean?
I think they wanted the raw footage.
Okay.
I mean, I actually have the voicemails from them, like, oh, we've been trying to reach you and everything else like that. And I think they thought that maybe there was a bunch of things because we did 2 interviews that they could use in the case that we didn't publicly release. But if you know Vlad TV, and both of you have been on Vlad TV, we use damn near every second of the footage. So they're kind of barking up the wrong tree. But my whole thing was that if someone interviews on my platform, I'm not going to turn around and then work with the police against them.
Correct.
Regardless of what it is that they said. It's just business-wise, in terms of my values, it's not what I do. So I didn't choose to cooperate.
By the way, what could they ask you that they didn't hear themselves?
It's all out
right there.
It's all out there. And he's done multiple interviews. It's not just Vlad TV.
Art of Dialogue.
Yeah, he did that. He did a few other ones. So it's kind of like...
He wrote a book?
He wrote a book. Well, and that's the whole thing. People thought that I got this whole confession out of the blue. Like, before we did the interview, we got a copy of the book. We read through the entire book, and that interview was, the blueprint of that interview was that book. So there were certain parts where I asked him a question, he didn't really want to answer it, and my thing was like, well, the book says X, Y, and Z, and then so he had to kind of address that. But if you write a book about a crime, I have no problems interviewing you about the book that you wrote.
Yeah.
Well, I had a question. You did this Keefe D interview how long ago?
4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Yep.
Isn't it kind of strange that he's arrested recently, opposed to, because the book was out before you did the interview, so it almost seemed like nobody cared until actually you did the interview and it started getting a little press?
Man, the wheels of justice turn slowly. It takes a while to line everything up. You know what I'm saying? I guess. I'm not involved in the case, and it's really up to Las Vegas PD and Keefe at the end of the day. But it takes a while to line something up, especially as epic and huge as this. And it happened, 26 years ago?
Yeah.
Back in 1996. Like, a lot has to be done in order to get a conviction. And it's not easy, because the last thing that they want to do is go and spend, whatever, potentially millions of dollars on a case for it to be found not guilty or just dismissed.
Right.
And it's not even just the Keefe D interview that I think, I would say constitutes you winning something like a Peabody. it's all the interviews you did surrounding it. It's the Greg Kading. Who else? Like if this was the Vlad cinematic universe, what would be all the interviews you got to watch to get the full story?
I mean, Greg Kading, who was the lead investigator, Chris Carroll, who was the first responder that showed up, you know, at the scene after Pac got shot and Suge got grazed. Edie Amin, who was in the car behind Tupac when he got killed.
That was the young ladies that followed him?
No.
That's one of the outlaws.
Oh, one of the outlaws, yeah.
Edie's part of the outlaws.
I didn't know if he was in that car with the young ladies. No,
Well, there were no young ladies in the car. It was like the cars were driving around, and a bunch of girls were like, Tupac, and then Pac like popped out the window, and was like, yo, what up? You know, so the ladies, you know, and I think like Edie told me that he thought that maybe it was a setup by those girls, but it wasn't. I guess the girls even got interviewed at one point. They were like, no, we just saw Tupac. We were calling out to him, and that's. By them calling out Tupac, that's how Keefe and them saw that, oh, Tupac is right here, and they'd been looking for him.
So watch the Keefe, Greg Kading,
Edie Amin, Chris Carroll. Yeah, just a lot of pieces.
Gotcha.
Put together.
Now, did he ever say was Pac the intended target, or was it Suge the intended target? Or because I did see that they thought Pac was grabbing